Give me the iPad. I need to secure the estate immediately. Morgan didn't offer a hug. She just snapped her fingers at me while our father lay dead in the room behind us. You wouldn't understand the finances anyway, Camilla. Let the adults handle it. She snatched the device. Too busy declining calls from a restricted number to actually mourn. I kept my face blank and handed it over. She thought she was seizing control, but she was actually taking the bait. I drove home to my one-bedroom apartment in silence. The air inside was stale, smelling of old books and dust, but it was organized. That is what I do. I am a professional archivist. I take boxes of chaotic, forgotten history and turn them into searchable, logical systems. People pay me to find the needle in the haystack. Morgan forgot that. To her, I was just the little sister who never left town, the one with the dusty job and the quiet life. She didn't realize that 6 months of organizing our father's hospice care, tracking every pill, every doctor's appointment, every decline in his vitals wasn't a burden. It was an audit. While I was learning how to adjust an oxygen flow regulator, Morgan was in Dubai closing the deal of the century. While I was sleeping in a chair next to his bed, listening to his breathing rattle, she was sending texts about how busy the market was. She thought her absence made her important. Dad knew it just made her expensive. The next day at the funeral home, the room smelled like lilies and floor wax. Morgan treated the viewing like a networking event. She wore a black dress that cost more than my car. Checking her watch every 3 minutes like grief was a meeting that was running long. She shook hands with the mayor, nodded at the bank manager, and ignored the casket completely. I stood in the corner, invisible, watching her work the room. Then she saw me. She cut through the crowd, her heels clicking sharp against the hardwood. She didn't ask how I was holding up. She pulled a document out of her designer bag and steered me toward an alcove, away from the guests. We need to streamline this, Camilla, she said, thrusting the paper at me. It is a waiver. It appoints me as the sole executor. It saves us time and saves you the headache. I looked at the paper. It wasn't just a waiver. It was a total surrender of control. I looked up at her, letting my eyes widen, playing the role she expected, the overwhelmed, fragile little sister. I don't know, Morgan, I stammered, making my voice thin. Dad said we should do it together. She laughed. A short, sharp sound that didn't reach her eyes. Thoroughly check your reality, Camilla. You are an archivist. You spend your entire day counting dust on dead people's papers. I close multi-million-dollar commercial real estate deals. You think organizing a library qualifies you to manage a portfolio this complex? She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper, performative sympathy dripping from every word. I am trying to protect you. You look terrible. You are exhausted. Do you really want to spend the next 6 months fighting with the IRS and lawyers? Let the adults handle the money. You just take some time. Go read a book. The insult landed exactly where she wanted it to. She wanted me to feel small. She wanted me to believe that my skills were worthless compared to her commission checks. But she made a mistake. She assumed that because I was quiet, I was stupid. I took the pen. My hand trembled not from fear, but from the effort of holding back the rage. You are right, I whispered. I don't think I can handle the stress right now. You are so good at this stuff. I signed the paper. But I signed it with a messy, illegible scrawl that didn't match my legal signature on file. It wouldn't hold up for 5 minutes in court, but it bought me the one thing I needed right now. Her arrogance. Morgan snatched the paper back, satisfied. Good girl, she said, patting my arm like I was a slow child. Go sit down before you faint. She walked away to charm the funeral director. I watched her go, smoothing my skirt. She thought she had just secured the empire. She didn't know she had just handed me the shovel to dig her grave. 2 weeks before the funeral, the air in my father's bedroom was thick with the scent of rubbing alcohol and inevitable endings. Dad was weak, his skin paper-thin, but his eyes were sharp, clear. He watched me organize his medication on the nightstand, lining up the bottles with the precision he'd taught me. She is waiting, you know, he whispered. His voice was a dry rattle, but the words were distinct. Morgan. She is counting the days. I stopped what I was doing. Dad, don't. We have to be realistic, Camilla. She is in debt. Deep debt. I heard her on the phone in the hallway last week. She needs a payout, and she thinks my estate is her ATM. He coughed, a wet, heavy sound that made my own chest ache. She thinks I am too sick to notice. She thinks you are too quiet to fight back. He reached out, his hand trembling, and pointed to the bottom drawer of his dresser. Get the form. I knew which one he meant. We'd discussed it when the prognosis turned terminal. I pulled out the bank authorization form. It was already filled out, changing the 2-factor authentication number on his primary savings account, the one with the $85,000 Morgan was desperate for. Change it, he rasped. Not to your number. She will guess that. Change it to the burner. I pulled the cheap, prepaid flip phone from my bag. We'd bought it with cash at a convenience store 3 towns over. No paper trail. No link to me. I wrote the number on the form, and Dad signed it. His signature was shaky, but firm enough to be legal. Now for the bait, he said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. She needs to think she has won. I took a plain spiral notebook from my bag. On the cover, in thick black marker, I wrote, Emergency Liquid Fund. Do not touch. Inside, on the first page, I wrote the username and password for the account. Real credentials. A real door, but thanks to the form we just signed. A door with a silent alarm that only rang in my pocket. I placed the notebook on the nightstand, right next to his glasses. It was the only thing in the room that looked careless. She won't be able to resist, Dad said, closing his eyes. Greed makes people blind, Camilla. Never forget that. Back in the present, the memory of that conversation felt like armor. I stood near the refreshment table at the wake, watching Morgan. She was working the room, accepting condolences with a practiced grace that didn't quite cover the tension in her shoulders. She kept glancing at her phone, then at the clock. Then, she saw it. I had left my purse on a chair in the corner, the flap intentionally unzipped. The corner of the spiral notebook was visible. Just a glimpse. I stepped out onto the funeral home's porch, pretending to take a call. Through the window, I watched. Morgan waited until a group of mourners moved toward the buffet. She slid over to my chair. She didn't look around. She didn't hesitate. She reached into my bag, pulled out the notebook, and flipped it open. I saw her eyes widen. She pulled out her phone and snapped a picture of the page. Then she shoved the notebook back into my purse and walked away, smoothing her dress. She had the key. She thought she had the kingdom. Later, as people were leaving, she cornered me again. I am worried about you, Camilla, she said, her voice loud enough for our aunt to hear. You seem unstable. The grief is making you paranoid. Aunt Linda said you were talking about changing the locks on Dad's house. That is not rational behavior. I looked at Aunt Linda, who was frowning at me with concern. Morgan was painting the picture. The crazy, grief-stricken sister, who needed to be managed. Who needed a guardian. I didn't say that, I said, letting my voice wobble. I don't know where the keys are. See? Morgan said, turning to Linda, with a sad shake of her head. She is confused. It is okay, sweetie. I will handle everything. We just need to make sure you don't do anything impulsive. Maybe we should look into a temporary conservatorship. Just until you are back on your feet. Whatever you think is best, I whispered, looking at the floor. Morgan squeezed my shoulder. It is for your own good. Dad always said you were fragile. She walked away, confident. She had the password. She had the narrative. She had the control. I put my hand in my pocket and felt the cool plastic of the burner phone. It was silent now. But I knew that tonight, when the lights went out and she thought she was alone, it would sing. The lawyer's office smelled of expensive leather and old money. Morgan sat in the plush chair like it was a throne. Her legs crossed, her foot tapping a restless rhythm against the leg of the mahogany table. She wasn't grieving. She was calculating. I could practically hear the numbers clicking in her head, tallying up the payout she needed to cover whatever hole she'd dug herself into. Mr. Henderson, our father's attorney for 30 years, sat behind his desk, peering over his spectacles. He looked tired. He opened the file in front of him, the paper rustling loud in the quiet room. The will is standard, he began, his voice gravelly. The estate, including the house, the life insurance policy, and all liquid assets, is to be divided equally between his 2 daughters, Morgan and Camilla. Morgan's head snapped up. Equally? Yes, Mr. Henderson said. 50-50. That is impossible, Morgan said, her voice tight. Dad told me he was leaving the bulk of it to me. He knew I was the one handling the real responsibilities. Camilla was just there. She turned to me, her eyes narrowing. You did this. You manipulated him when he was sick. I sat still, hands folded in my lap. I didn't manipulate anyone, Morgan. I took care of him. Took care of him? She scoffed. You were a glorified nurse. You think changing bedpans entitles you to half the estate? I am the one who advised him on his investments. I am the one who kept this family solvent. There were no investments to advise on. Morgan, I said quietly. He lived on a pension. Because he didn't listen to me, she snapped. Then she turned back to the lawyer. I demand an audit. Immediately. I know there is more money. There has to be. Dad had a secret account. He mentioned it. Mr. Henderson sighed. There is no secret account, Morgan. We have a full accounting of all assets. Then funds are missing, she insisted, pointing a finger at me. She took it. She had access to the house. She has been siphoning money for months. Look at her. She has probably been stealing cash from his wallet for years. I demand a full forensic audit of all accounts for the last 12 months, she declared, leaning forward. And I want a freeze on all distributions until it is done. Mr. Henderson looked at her over his glasses. An audit will be expensive, Morgan. And it will delay probate significantly. I don't care, she hissed. I am not letting her steal my inheritance. Very well, the lawyer said. However, there is one matter we need to address first. As standard procedure, we froze all of Thomas's accounts immediately upon notification of his death. He paused, looking down at a paper in the file. However, he continued, the bank notified us of an irregularity. It seems there was an attempted access to one of the savings accounts on the night of his death. Morgan went still. Attempted access? She repeated, her voice carefully neutral. Yes, Mr. Henderson said. Someone tried to log in and transfer funds, but the transfer failed. Morgan let out a short, incredulous laugh. Well, there you go. Proof. She tried to loot the account before you could freeze it. I told you she was a thief. She looked at me with a smirk that was pure poison. You are not just incompetent, Camilla. You are a criminal. You tried to steal from a dead man. I didn't defend myself. I didn't argue. I just watched her. She thought she had me. She thought she had found the smoking gun that would cut me out of the will and hand her everything. We will get to the bottom of who accessed the account, Mr. Henderson said. The bank logs everything. Good, Morgan said, leaning back in her chair, satisfied. Get the logs. Prove it was her. And when you do, I want her prosecuted. She looked at me, her eyes gleaming with triumph. You are done, Camilla. You are going to walk away with nothing. Just like you deserve. I looked back at her, keeping my face impassive. We will see, I said softly. She didn't know. She didn't know about the burner phone. She didn't know about the timestamp. She didn't know that the trap she thought she'd sprung on me was actually closing around her own neck. She checked her watch again, impatient for her victory lap. Let's get this audit started, she said. I have a plane to catch. She stood up, gathering her things, already mentally spending the money she thought she'd won. I stood up too, moving slowly. Goodbye, Morgan, I said. Don't pretend we are family, she sneered. After this, you are nothing to me. She walked out the door, her heels clicking a rhythm of arrogance and greed. I watched her go, feeling a strange mix of sadness and cold resolve. She had just signed her own confession. Now, all I had to do was wait for the court date. The probate hearing was 2 weeks later. The courtroom wasn't dramatic like on TV. It was small, smelling of floor polish and stale coffee, humming with the sound of the stenographer's typing. Morgan sat at the petitioner's table, looking every inch the aggrieved, responsible daughter. She wore a navy suit that screamed executive competence and kept shooting concerned, pitying glances in my direction for the benefit of the judge. She took the stand with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed her lines in the mirror. I only want what is best for the estate, she told the judge, her voice trembling just the right amount. My father was confused at the end. And my sister, well, Camilla has always been fragile. She doesn't have the head for numbers. I am afraid she has mismanaged the assets during his illness. I just want to protect what is left. My lawyer, Mr. Henderson, didn't interrupt. He let her talk. He let her paint the picture of me as the incompetent, emotional wreck, and herself as the stoic savior. He let her dig the hole deep. When it was his turn, he stood up slowly. He adjusted his glasses. Miss Walker, he said, his voice mild. You stated in your deposition that you have never accessed, or attempted to access, your father's banking accounts prior to your appointment as executor. Is that correct? Absolutely, Morgan said, chin high. I respected the legal process. Unlike my sister, I know how these things work. So, you did not have his passwords? No, she lied. Smooth. Flawless. And you were with your father when he passed? I was by his side until the very end, she said, wiping a non-existent tear. Mr. Henderson picked up a single sheet of paper from his table. Let's talk about the night of October 14th. Specifically, the minutes immediately following your father's death. Morgan frowned. Just slightly. A crack in the porcelain. Where were you at 11:42 p.m.? Mr. Henderson asked. I was in the hospital room, she said. Grieving. I was alone with him. You weren't on your phone? I might have been calling family, she scoffed. I don't remember every second. My father had just died. We aren't interested in calls, Miss Walker. Mr. Henderson walked to the witness stand and placed the paper in front of her. This is a security log from a burner phone. A phone your father purchased 2 weeks before he died for the sole purpose of two-factor authentication. Morgan went still. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to the paper. At 11:42 p.m. Mr. Henderson read aloud, his voice hardening. A login attempt was made to the account labeled Emergency Liquid Fund. The password was entered correctly. The bank sent a 6-digit verification code to this phone. He paused, letting the silence stretch until it was thin and tight. The IP address of the device attempting the login matches the public Wi-Fi at St. Jude's Hospital, he continued. And the device ID matches an iPhone 14 Pro. That is your phone, isn't it, Miss Walker? Morgan stared at the paper. Her mouth opened, then closed. The color drained from her face, leaving her makeup standing out like war paint. She started. But the arrogance was gone. I was just checking. To make sure the money was safe. You just testified under oath that you didn't have the password, Mr. Henderson said, his voice like a whip. The only place that password existed was written inside a sealed envelope in your father's bedside drawer, an envelope that was found torn open the next morning. The judge leaned forward, his expression darkening. He looked from the log to Morgan. You didn't check the balance, Miss Walker, my lawyer said. You hit transfer. You tried to move $85,000 into your personal checking account 12 minutes after your father's heart stopped, but you couldn't complete it. Because you didn't have the code. Morgan gripped the railing of the witness stand. Her knuckles were white. She looked at her lawyer, but he was staring at his desk, refusing to meet her eyes. She looked at me. I didn't look away. I didn't smile. I just watched the realization hit her. She hadn't just lost the argument. She had committed perjury, and she had done it on public record. The silence in the courtroom wasn't empty. It was heavy, pressing against my eardrums like deep water. Morgan looked around the room, searching for an exit, a loophole, a friendly face. She found none. Her lawyer was staring at the 2FA log with the expression of a man realizing he was standing in a pool of gasoline holding a lit match. Morgan stammered, her voice cracking. I was confused. The grief. I just wanted to secure the legacy. Stop, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through her excuses like a scalpel. I looked her in the eye, finally letting her see the pity I felt not for her situation, but for her character. Dad didn't forget his password. Morgan. He didn't leave that notebook out by mistake. He gave it to you. She blinked, the gears in her head grinding to a halt. What? He told me you were waiting for him to die, I said, the words tasting like ash. He knew about your debts. He knew you viewed his estate as your bailout. So he set a test. He left the credentials, where only a thief would find them. And he changed the verification number to the one device you couldn't access. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. He gave you the rope, Morgan. You are the one who tied the noose. Morgan turned to her attorney, her eyes wide and frantic. Do something, she hissed. Fix this. Her lawyer didn't comfort her. He didn't object. He stood up, his movements stiff and formal. Your Honor, he said. I request an immediate sidebar. The judge nodded. They approached the bench, my lawyer, hers, and the judge. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the body language. Morgan's lawyer was speaking rapidly, gesturing to the log. He looked back at Morgan once, his face a mask of professional disgust. He realized his client had just committed perjury on the stand, implicating him in a fraud. He wasn't going to let her drag his license down with her. They returned to their tables. Morgan's lawyer began packing his briefcase. The click of the latches echoed like gunshots. Your Honor, he stated, refusing to look at Morgan. In light of new evidence regarding my client's testimony, I have discovered an irreconcilable ethical conflict. I motion to withdraw as counsel, effective immediately. Morgan gasped. You can't leave. I pay you. You paid for representation, Miss Walker. The judge cut in, his voice ice cold. Not for complicity in perjury. The judge shuffled the papers on his bench, aligning them with terrifying precision. He looked down at Morgan, who was now alone at her table, stripped of her armor, her status, and her defense. The evidence is irrefutable, the judge ruled. The attempt to access estate funds prior to probate, combined with the false testimony given under oath, constitutes a direct violation of the estate's no-contest clause regarding fraud and malfeasance. He stamped the order. I am ruling that Morgan Walker has forfeited her share of the estate. The entirety of the assets will pass to the remaining beneficiary, Camilla Walker. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for review regarding the attempted theft and perjury. Morgan slumped in her chair. It wasn't a graceful faint. It was a collapse of structure. She looked like a building whose foundation had just been detonated. She had walked in demanding everything. She was walking out with a criminal record. Court is adjourned, the judge said. I gathered my files. I didn't look at Morgan. There was nothing left to say to her. The ledger was balanced. Morgan didn't wait for the bailiff to dismiss us. She stormed out of the courtroom, the heavy oak doors slamming behind her with a violence that shook the frame. I packed my bag slowly. I checked my phone. I thanked Mr. Henderson. I walked out into the hallway, breathing in the air that no longer smelled like her expensive perfume. But she hadn't left. She was waiting for me in the parking lot, pacing between the rows of cars like a caged animal. The midday sun was harsh, stripping away the courtroom shadows and leaving nowhere to hide. When she saw me, she lunged. "You ruined everything!" she screamed, her voice shredding the quiet of the parking lot. "Do you have any idea what you have done? That money was mine. I earned it." She got in my face, invading my space, using her height and her heels to loom over me. It was the same tactic she'd used since we were kids. Physical intimidation. Volume. Force. "You think you are smart?" she spat, her eyes wild. "You are nothing. You are a little mouse hiding in a library. I am going to bury you, Camilla. I will spend every last dime I have dragging you through appeals until you beg me to stop." I looked at her. Really looked at her. And realized the monster I'd feared for 30 years was just a desperate woman in a wrinkled suit. "You don't have any dimes left to spend, Morgan," I said calmly. "I have assets," she shrieked. "I have leverage. I eat people like you for breakfast, remember? That is what you said. This is my world, not yours." "It was your world," I corrected. "Until you perjured yourself in it." Before she could scream again, a diesel engine roared to life behind her. A flatbed tow truck backed into the lane, blocking her luxury SUV. The backup beeper cut through her tirade like a metronome. Morgan spun around. "Hey! What are you doing? Get away from my car!" A man in a grease-stained jumpsuit hopped out of the cab. He didn't look like a lawyer. He didn't care about her suit or her shouting. He held a tablet in one hand and a chain in the other. "Morgan Walker?" he asked, not looking up from his screen. "Yes. And you are blocking me in." "I am repossessing the vehicle," he said flatly, kneeling to hook the chains to her bumper. "Order came through 10 minutes ago." "This is a mistake!" Morgan yelled, rushing toward him. "I pay my bills. My credit is perfect." The man stood up and turned the tablet screen toward her. "Lady, you stopped making payments 90 days ago. The GPS tracker on this thing lit up at the courthouse, so I have been waiting for you to come out. Saved me a trip to your house." Morgan froze. The color that had returned to her face drained away again. 90 days? I asked, putting the pieces together. "Morgan, you didn't just need the inheritance for debts. You were insolvent." She stared at the truck, her hands shaking. The truth spilled out, not because she wanted to confess, but because she couldn't hold it back anymore. "It was a bridge loan," she whispered, the fight draining out of her. "I leveraged the car, the house, everything. I took a hard money loan to pay for the lawyer and cover the vigorish on the other debts. It was all due. Today." I understood then. The rush. The demand for the iPad in the hospital hallway. The desperation at the funeral. She wasn't just greedy. She was drowning. She had bet her entire existence on receiving that $85,000 and the house equity immediately. She had leveraged her life against a payout she assumed was guaranteed. "You bet on Dad dying," I said, the realization cold in my stomach. "And you bet on me being weak." "I can fix this," she muttered, patting her pockets for a phone that was now evidence in a criminal investigation. "I just need time." "You are out of time," the repo man said. He hit the winch. The cable pulled taut. The SUV, Morgan's symbol of superiority, her armor against the world, groaned as it was dragged onto the flatbed. "My house," she gasped, turning to me, eyes wide with horror. The loan was cross-collateralized. "If they take the car, they take the condo," I finished. She lunged for me then, grabbing my arm. "Camilla, please. You have the money now. You have the house. Help me. Just pay off the bridge loan. I will pay you back. I swear." I looked at her hand on my arm. The same hand that had snatched the waiver at the funeral. The same hand that had tried to steal from our dead father. I pulled my arm away. "No," I said. "You can't leave me with nothing," she screamed as the tow truck began to pull away. "I am your sister." "You stopped being my sister when you tried to make me your victim," I said. I walked to my car, a 5-year-old sedan, fully paid off, reliable, and mine. I got in and locked the door. Morgan was standing in the empty parking spot, screaming at the sky. A queen of nothing, ruling over a kingdom of asphalt and debt. I drove out of the city limits, past the suburbs where Morgan's empty condo sat, past the funeral home, past the lawyer's office. I drove until the air smelled like salt, and and the horizon opened up into the gray expanse of the Atlantic. I parked at a quiet beach overlook, the engine ticking as it cooled. It was over. I reached into my bag and pulled out two things. The burner phone, its screen dark and silent, and the single sheet of paper with the account credentials for the emergency liquid fund, the bait that had caught a shark. I looked at the paper one last time. It was just numbers and letters, but it represented everything my father had tried to teach me in his final days. That silence isn't weakness. That preparation beats volume. That integrity is the only currency that doesn't devalue. I tore the paper into strips, then into confetti. I opened the car window and let the sea breeze take them. They fluttered away like white moths, disappearing into the dunes. Then I took the burner phone. I smashed it against the pavement. Once, twice, until the screen shattered and the plastic casing cracked. I walked to a trash can near the trailhead and tossed the pieces inside. Morgan would face the DA. She would face the banks. She would face the consequences of a lifetime of treating people like stepping stones. I wouldn't be there to watch. I didn't need to see her fall to know I was standing. I got back in my car. My phone buzzed a text from Mr. Henderson confirming the estate transfer process had begun. I replied with a simple, "Thank you." I wasn't rich. The taxes and fees would take a chunk, and the house needed repairs. But I was debt-free. I was safe. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I started the car and turned onto the highway, heading back toward my quiet life, my archives, my dust. People like Morgan think the world belongs to the loud. They think history is written by the conquerors. But archivists know the truth. History is written by the people who keep the records. And I had kept them all. Share this if you know someone who underestimates the quiet one.